Is this going? It is going. It is October 5th, 2023. It's almost 3 p.m. Nebraska time. I'm in Nebraska on my way back from Vegas. My health bar is at 1%. Excuse me. I got a little bit of a cold here, so I'm super spreading across the United States. How are you doing? How are you doing? I should probably take that out of the video, but this is what I call being authentic. I don't give no F's about no F and F's. This ain't a studio production. The revolution won't be televised. Sick as a dog, bro. I am listening to Douglas Murray on a podcast. He's a real interesting cat. Oh, actually, I think he's a bloke. By his accent. Talking about lots of different stuff. But as intelligent as he is, and I haven't read any of his books or stuff, and he's on a comedy podcast, so maybe he's keeping it very simplified. His takes aren't so hot. I don't think we're at the end of the world. I don't think that this is the fall of the Roman Empire. I don't personally think the USA is even an empire. And everybody that's listening that thinks that is probably freaking out. So in my sick brain, since I got like 1,200 miles to get home and I'm on a straightaway, getting extremely frustrated with people in Nebraska. They drive like idiots. I'm on a 2-lane highway. I don't understand. They don't understand passing. Like right now, they're all traveling at the same speed next to one another, so you can't get around. Instead of traveling at the same speed in the traveling lane and letting people pass in the passing lane, they're just going under the speed limit right now in the passing lane and blocking traffic for everybody. So I don't know if they're low IQ in Nebraska, dumb, inconsiderate, or what it is exactly, but it's frustrating. I'm on 80 East. Anywho, so let me unpack a little bit of what I just said. I'll give you a white pill. I haven't read Michael Malice's book, so if he discusses some of what I'm about to say, which I wouldn't be surprised if he did, maybe you've already heard some of these ideas from somebody. But one thing that we have now that we didn't really have in the past with prior empires is a way to globally share information and a way to globally share decentralized value. So those are two really important things. Some of the scary things, well, let me dissect that for a second. So I can talk to just about anybody on the planet with internet or a mobile phone. And although there is some phone companies like BioFi that's working on a decentralized phone with blockchain script on the phone, that'll be a decentralized phone on a decentralized network with decentralized software. The current networks are somewhat decentralized, where they can see your data and they can see your communication and they can intercept it. You can at least talk to people throughout the world and share information that we didn't have in the past. The information was highly controlled, so you'd have to turn on a TV or a radio And if you turn on, like, quote unquote mainstream media, corporate dinosaur media, it's a couple of guys in a place writing the news, and then all the talking heads are reading that throughout the country. And that's what it was for the longest time, is if you wanted to get an idea of what was going on, you could only see what they were trying to sell you. So now when you turn that stuff on, you got to remember, that's propaganda. It's not just for you, it's for anybody that can watch it. So they're not just sending you as a citizen propaganda about Ukraine and Russia. When Ukraine and Russia are watching that, they also are feeding them propaganda. So they can't tell you the truth, because they can't tell the enemy the truth either. So don't take it too personal. There's some levels to this. But now you can kind of create blogs in public squares and go online and videos, and as much as people get upset about some of the censorship and even some of the other sites that censor, and they're looking for advertising and ways to fund it and stuff, and the currency is currently mostly centralized because the average individual still does not know how to use decentralized currencies or banking. You can still share data and buy stuff globally from individuals, which is something we didn't have before. So we had the transfer of, even the transfer of people, the mobility of people is a somewhat new phenomenon over the global scape of the world. And with the exception of the food spoiling, you can also share food, herbs, and what have you globally now. So everybody, obviously there's a monetary setup to it, a value setup to it, meaning if you don't have the value to buy it, then you can't get it. But if you have the value and there's no barriers, that stuff is global now. The information is spreading pretty inexpensively, at least within the United States and many other places. I mean, if you have access to a library, you can go there and get all sorts of information, where in the past there was literal books that were translated, and then individuals would have to read those books to you after they interpret it, and they could just leave out the parts that they didn't want you to know about. So similar to the printing press, when people could have their own Bible and they didn't have to rely on the priests, you can share information digitally with one another. As we move to digital currency, there's a lot of people now that can share value with one another without involving the governments for the most part. Now, evil is always going to be evil, so yes, you still have to dodge being thrown in a cage and what have you. But these are two huge positive benefits of living in today's society that's different in the past. Now, things that I do think that are somewhat troublesome is the idea of the polarity of communism versus fascism is strange, because it's all totalitarianism, but a rose by any other rose is still a rose. So, the people that are for communism are in a mindset that the companies are fascists, controlling, power hungry, greedy. And then the people that are fascists believe that the government and the communal collectives are greedy. But it's all just one totality. Welcome to the Morning Zoo Show. Totalitarianism. WTATOTALI. And once you start seeing it as a structure of control, what becomes scary is there's these entities that are pretty much government controlled. The corporations, which is just pieces of words on a piece of paper saying that these special people get privileges and will enforce them with our guns or weapons that are funded via force. But the fact that they're buying up so much farmland is scary. The fact that they're creating seeds, GMO seeds, genetically modified, I guess it's, what is it, organisms? No, or organics? I'm not sure what the last one stands for. I don't believe it's a tomato with scary eyes coming after you, though. But they do that so they can own a patent on a particular type of seed, and if the pollen floats into other areas and infects somebody else's crops, they can then own those crops as well. So that's kind of troublesome. And now BlackRock is going around and buying up properties and land. So they're buying up housing and they're buying up farmland. Now, I'm hoping that the housing thing is just them recognizing that they've over manipulated the market to a point where they have to print and buy these houses to prop it up, and not that they're trying to control the housing market through ownership, meaning, you know, you'll own nothing and be happy. But because people aren't buying these houses, so I'm in my area or whatever, the housing went through the roof because I live in New Hampshire, and during COVID, people that were locked down in their houses and other places, these great states that they've designed that you have to wear masks and everything, and they're totally 100% all for masks and lockdowns and safeties and flattening the curve. They all ran away from Massachusetts, Connecticut, even Vermont in some cases, Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, and they hid in New Hampshire for a couple of years because they were actually free to move around. And as soon as they got there, of course, and maybe this was by, you know, some evil design, or maybe this was just a benefit for the lockdowns, is people fled blue areas to go into red areas, and then because they're parasitical, they just tried to change those red areas into blue areas. Lucky for New Hampshire, you know, a couple of things that they tried to push through is a sales tax and an income tax, but everybody was like, oh, you can go fuck yourself, my friend, goodbye. So when everybody fled New Hampshire, the prices were a little bit high, and some people probably lost some money selling to move back. So I was hoping that the market would go down, and it went down to a certain extent, but the second that it dropped to a reasonable location, they increased the interest rates from like 3 to like 7 or 8%. So now you're in the same spot again financially. So if you're not intelligent enough to see this, which is maybe also their plan, you think, oh, that was a $500,000 house, but now I'm only paying $350,000 for it, so I'm getting a huge deal. You know, I'm saving $200K. And then when you look at the interest rate, you're actually paying the same payment to the bank. So the bank is still getting the same cash flow for their business, and the pricing doesn't matter. Now, in order for the market to readjust and be unattached, what happens is people that make bad investments and bad loans and bad banking in a particular situation, if they need to move, they either have to stay in these houses until they can find somebody that was willing to pay that, or if they want to move, they have to keep lowering the price until somebody's willing to pay that particular price. And so as these houses go down, further and further in price, if the difference between what they owe and what they sell for becomes a loss to the bank and a lower payment for the bank, and a lower payment to the bank means lower interest for the bank, which means lower money. So as hyperinflation hits, they need to make sure that they're charging enough interest that they're making their huge profits again. And you can't do that as the price is naturally lower. You can do it if they were actually borrowing or lending the money that was in the bank. But what they did is they increased the interest rates, but they didn't increase the savings rate. So like, you still get 0% interest from a savings account, but you have to pay 8% on a loan. Whereas in the past, what would happen is you might put your money in a savings account and they say, okay, well, we're lending the money at 8, so we'll give you 5, we'll take the 3, and it incentivizes people to save and put their money in the bank and cut back on spending. None of this is happening. So I think what's happening is, what would be the white pill of the situation is not that they're trying to own all the land so that they can be the one monopoly on property ownership, but they're afraid that the price is going to keep going down. So if they can keep buying houses at like $400K, they can stabilize the market so that people think that the house next to that is worth $400K and pay $400K for it that don't know any better. And they're trying to prop up everything, and then once they can get the prices propped up in their mind, then they can resell these houses back into the market at the higher price. And as they hold these empty houses, because they have a connection with the banks and with the government, they don't end up paying taxes. They take it as a loss on these empty properties because of depreciation. So they don't even have to end up giving money to any projects or whatever. So in a free market that wasn't heavily coerced, they'd be purchasing liabilities, but they become pseudo assets because they're tax write-offs, and therefore as they make record profits, they pay less. They don't have to pay any taxes on it, and they get to keep even more of their particular income. That's quite a bit of a tangent, but that would be a better scenario than them buying up all the property so that there's some sort of oligarchy ownership of property. Having said all that, I don't really see what the benefit of controlling the and owning all the property is, considering you can't own your property anyways because it's leased from the government. So even if you have a house and you pay it off 100%, or you build a house, whatever, and you buy the lumber and you build it and you put your efforts in on a piece of property, they want you to pay taxes on the land that's on, and if you don't, they come and throw you in a cage and take your property anyways. So you can't really own it in the current system as it is, which sometimes makes you wonder if renting isn't the better option for mobility, taxes, and angles for them to threaten you. I don't know. I'll have to think about that one a little bit more. But back to the end of the world as we know it. Apple pie, Coca-Cola, something else, and Billie Jean and Billy Joel. If they convince you that it's the end of the world, which they've been doing for so long, then they convince you that there's no future, and if you internalize that, you might be against having kids, and the low IQ people are going to continue to have it no matter what, because they're having kids because they're making bad decisions, not the kids are a bad decision. It's just that the kids aren't planned. Intelligent people that are planning their lives a little bit more might plan to not have kids because they plan on the world ending if they're convinced, which then again may make them less intelligent as well, or less intelligent when it comes to being influenced by propaganda. So I see a lot of like young kids feel the anxiety. There's no reason of living. They're depressed, so they're on pharmaceuticals. They don't want to have family. They don't want to have kids. They don't want to buy a house. They don't want to look to the future. If they can convince you that the world's going to end and things are going to be over and these are the end times, then you're not going to build for the future. You're not going to worry about the future. You're not going to think about saving the future. And once you've internalized that, it makes it really easy for invasion too. Well, why would I even try to protect the land that that my forefathers had? Because it's just going to be gone. We're all going to be dead in a couple of years. And without pulling the old card, they get better and better at it, or people have less and less connection with their family. But they tried this same BS when I was a kid and when my parents were a kid. There's always something that they're pushing. So I didn't really care. I had already been thinking that politicians were idiots. But Al Gore, they used to play Al Gore at school, and he'd have these speeches, and you'd have to write essays and answer questions about this propaganda they had. And he was basically saying that the world is the climate change and everything is going to destroy the world. And then by the year 2000, so 23 years ago and more, that because of climate change and because of global warming and how hot everything was getting and how much the glaciers were going to melt and how much the snow was going to melt, that New York City would no longer exist. It would be underwater. And since it's October 5th, 2023, maybe he is right now, because isn't New York City like underwater? Aren't they being flooded right as we speak? Or weren't they being flooded back on like the October 2nd and 3rd? So maybe he was just 20 plus years off. But fear is the opposite of love. So I'm sure you've heard the term fear-mongering. So if they can get you in a fear state, a scared state, a worried state, then you're much more controllable than if you're filled and happy and full of love. I just traveled all the way across the country, saw all sorts of different types of people in all sorts of different types of states. And although I know how to weave conversations so that I'm not being too blatantly myself with strangers, I was absolutely 100% welcome wherever I went. You can call it white privilege if you want, but it was even in Florida when I was at the Soul Food restaurant. People were happy to see me. They talked to me. They made eye contact. Same thing at the poker tables. Same thing in Vegas. Same thing in the woods of North Carolina. When you get offline and you get off the propaganda machines and you go into the real world interactions do not match up with what they're telling you is going on. Now, certain ones may in certain areas, because I can tell you, for example, like if you go to one of the red pill groups or the manosphere groups, whatever, somebody like a Rich Cooper. Like if you go to a Rich Cooper's Twitter account, X account, and you start reading the comments, you'll see a bunch of angry men. And it's sad because Rich is got a positive message of self-improvement and doing better and trying to explain and help people understand, young men understand, that women are women and men are men. And yet it's still full of really hateful guys that are like, well, women want somebody that's 6 feet and I'm under 6 feet, so I can't get a woman. I'm under 6 feet. I just crossed the country. I talked to plenty of women along the trip. No one took a tape measure out and decided to see how tall I was while I was on my journey. So, yes, when I was in like Massachusetts and you're playing hard mode as somebody who's not, a liberal or whatever in the area, that's just neutral, apolitical, doesn't care about politics or whatever, it was much more difficult. So I can see why people would start believing within that fish tank, that bubble of a group, that's the reality of the situation. But once you get out of that and you start moving around, you see that that's a culture that's in those particular areas that have been bred outside of the colleges. And and also similar to when I was in I was in some other areas like New Mexico, where I talked about veganism, and there's meatheads there, and they gave me the same thing. There's a culture of meat eating and cattle and stuff, and they were very negative to that. So you're gonna have microcosms of of individuals with different opinions, but the reality of the situation for me, and there's a little bit of a contradiction in that statement, I see, because it's not for me if it's the reality of the situation. But I'll say, in my experience traveling across country, most of what I see online is not the true experience of what's going on in the world. There wasn't any political infighting. If people are upset about me about stuff that I said, they didn't bring it up. They didn't try to fight me. They didn't call the cops. If the women felt threatened by me and didn't like me, I guess I didn't talk to them, because most of the women that I approached and talked to were very friendly, talkative, held the conversation back and forth. Obviously, some easier than others, and people are all different. And I did get bad vibes from a few people, but I just think it's because me and those people don't get along. It didn't have to do with their sex bits. And the idea that the world is ending, it's like I was in Vegas, right? And sure, people are drinking, people are getting tattoos, people are doing drugs, people are partying, people are gambling, people are being hypersexual on the streets. It's more acceptable for those people to be like that, but I'm in Vegas, so I expect that. But if I just go, a couple hours up north to Utah, I'm going to see the exact opposite. I saw tons of women that weren't tattooed, that were very friendly, that were family oriented, that wanted to have kids. And if you're only looking at the streets of Fremont Street, then maybe in your mind you're going to translate that into the world's ending. But there's quite a few people that I saw that are making long-term plans for the future. So let's get to a little philosophy here, now that I chopped all this stuff up. How do you know thyself? How do you navigate this area of the world? Well, I guess you just got to ask yourself, do I want to be empathetic to the future me? Because whatever you do now and tomorrow and the next day is going to set the pathwork up for where you are in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years. So let's just say, by some miracle, the world doesn't end by the time you're 80, 85, 90, 100 years old. Would you like to be in a situation where you lived your life as if there was going to be a better tomorrow and that you can have kids and family and community? Or do you want to live like you're going to die tomorrow and the world's going to end, and then it doesn't end and you got nothing, and then you're just going to get sadder and more lonelier because you didn't plan for the future? Furthermore, let's say we knew, or you knew, or other people knew that the world was not going to oh, take me, Lord. This is the big one. I can feel it. So imagine a world in which people could predict that you were going to live to 100 based on your genetics and choices and the way you live and the lifestyle you live, that you were going to live to 100. And they knew, based on their choices, DNA and stuff, that they were going to only live to 80. So you were going to have a 20-year advantage on them. Or they were going to live to 60 and you were going to live to 100, and you had 40 years advantage, whatever it is. And those are going to be happy years for you and happy years for them. Could you see the evolutionary advantage to that person that's going to live less than you, to convince you that you're going to have a worse life and live less than them? And then because of that, you start changing your strategies of life and start making short-term decisions instead of long-term decisions. Could you see how that would be really beneficial for that other individual to sabotage you in such a way? If you want to look at it from a more philosophical point of view, let's say that we know 100%, hypothetically, let's say we just knew 100% that we had free will. You have free will, and you can make decisions and choices about your life to control it so that it gets better and so that it improves, and things in your life are sculpted based on the decisions you make because you have free will. And you knew this indefinitely, 100%. Could you see the evolutionary benefit for somebody to come in and can try to convince you that things are deterministic, that you don't have control, that it's chemical releases, and no matter what you do, it's going to feel like free will, but it's not going to be free will. It's just kind of scripted, and the chemicals release, and you just act in a manner that's instinctual. Can you see what a huge evolutionary advantage that person that's sabotaging you, basically convincing you that you don't have free will and that you're deterministic, would be? Meanwhile, they're practicing and using free will. Or, back to what I was saying before, can you see the huge evolutionary strategy and benefit and success rate for a group of individuals that were convincing you that the world was going to end, and they knew it wasn't going to end and it was getting better, to make you think that it was getting sad and worse and destroyed and there's nothing to live for, and the planet's going to be destroyed and the land's being owned and you're getting oppressed against and everybody hates you, and when you go out people hate you and they're looking at you wrong and they don't want to be with you and they think you're evil, they think you're toxic? Can you see the advantage there? If you were in a relationship with somebody and that person was waking up every morning and telling you negative things, the world's going to end. You're not going to find a job. When you go out today to find a job, you're going to be oppressed. The people are going to not like you because of something that's out of your control. Your body, yeah, the reason you feel uncomfortable in your body is not because, we're stressing you out. It's because you need to change your body. You need to put these chemicals into it. You need to cut this off. You need to script it. You need plastic surgery. If somebody was telling you that, a person in your life was telling you that you needed to change so that people would like you, or that the world is going to end, and they were filling your mind with negative thoughts, would you consider that an abusive relationship? Or would you consider that a healthy relationship? If you woke up in the morning and you internalized negative stuff, if you woke up in the morning, your first thought is, just another day that doesn't matter because the world's going to end soon. Everything's going to collapse. I'll never be able to own a house. My job stinks. The opposite sex either hates me, or they're evil, aggressive, and manipulative, or they're violent and toxic, or my neighbor's this way and I'm this way. If you internalize that and in your sequence of thoughts every day was abusive self-talk, would you think you're happy and content, or would you think you're depressed and sad and filled with anxiety? If you're having a good day and you're happy and content, and you went to somebody that was in your life and said, man, I'm having a good day today. Things are going well. I woke up this morning, X, Y, and Z happened, which I'm excited about. And tomorrow I'm going to do A, B, and C. And their response was, oh, well, what's the point? Because of A, B, C, D, whatever. And they brought you down. They were negative about it. Or they said, oh, that's not going to happen for you because of this predetermined thing that you can't do anything about. Would you consider that person an ally or a good friend? Now, I'm not suggesting that they be nice, that they lie to you, if you're making a bad decision, I want them to be honest with you. So this isn't a you go girl type scenario that you want everybody extremely positive around you all the time, because you do need feedback to keep you based in reality. I'm saying when you have actual, real, good, positive things working for you that are being put in place for you to create a personal or communal or family legacy, and there's actors, whether they're individual or collective around you, and they're working in a way to convince you that that's not true, just ask yourself. I'm not saying anything. Do you think that's an abusive relationship that you should leave, or at least recognize, or figure out why that is? Now, for quite a bit of time now, let me see, I don't know, I'm 48. I would guess from at least 2000, so at least 23 years, if not more. When I was 16, I was doing a lot of artwork, and I found an old American flag, and I put some black and white paint splashed all over and stuff, and in the middle I made a big A, or an anarchy sign. It's still hanging in one of my friend's houses. It's from the band. So, however long that was ago, I started living my life in a manner where, to the best of my ability, within the cage, within the system, that I'm not going to participate with the abusive individuals. And I got flack for many times. So it's not necessarily just cutting people off outright. You still have to look at things in shades of gray. So, example, I have some really good libertarian friends that are still placating to the system. They're still bending a knee. They still think that you can get back to a minarchy. To me, they don't understand that it's an evil and good fight. They think that they're thinking very naive, and they get pretty upset that I don't vote. But I'm not going to call that an abusive relationship because they ask me to vote every year and I tell them no. So I'm not suggesting you just cut people out of your life altogether. What I am suggesting is, if you're going to know thyself and you're going to start practicing either male or female stoicism, where you understand the chemical release in your body and act appropriately, not react to the chemicals, but act to the chemicals, intercept them with your prefrontal cortex and make a decision of what you're going to do. So just quick sidebar here. If you're a man practicing stoicism, what I would suggest is you don't ignore and bury your feelings. When the chemicals release, you experience them, you sit there and you experience them, but I wouldn't show those emotions. I would channel those emotions into activities. So if you're getting an excess amount of testosterone, you want to go work out, exercise, or do something like that. If you're getting angry, I would figure out what I'm getting angry at, and I would also put that into running, exercise, writing, my business, or whatever. A woman, what I would do, if I understood my emotions of sadness or excitement or whatever, I would let them come out. So if you're sad about something, it's okay to cry, and if you're frustrated about something, it's okay to cry. But I would recognize why you're crying and what the emotions are, but also not use them as a manipulation tactic for those around you, and then communicate what's going on with those. So those are the two, really brief. I'll do a full video on the future ways that I think that people should practice emotional stoicism and understanding. So it's a little bit different for women. I don't know if stoicism is a great idea, because like stoic kind of gives you the image of just sitting there like this, you know. Oh, I'm in complete joy right now. Oh, sorry, I'm depressed and sad. But it's more of understanding what your biology does, and then reacting, and instead of reacting, acting, making a choice of how you're going to deal with those chemicals. But anyways, back to knowing thyself, and I'm just going to end this video real quick after this. I would take a look at myself, look at the actors in my life that I can control at first. So while you're working on your own positive self-talk and figuring out what you get upset about, start evaluating your closest relationships that are shorter. So they'll be the easiest to break off if you need to break them off. So if you're starting to meet new people from a new job or a new school or new system, you can categorize them into work or school and not turn it into a bigger relationship. And then if they're giving you negative self-talk, or not, if they're giving you negative talk to you, abusive talk, any of the stuff that I just talked about, not pursue a relationship. And then, I wouldn't just start like cutting everybody out of my life, but you want to start having conversations with people and say, hey, look, every time we hang out, you're kind of Debbie Downer and you're saying A, B, and C, and I can't deal with that because I'm a positive person with good things in my life. So we can either work on this together and both start being more positive and less abusive. But if that's not something you can do, then I really am working for the future. I really want to be happy. I want to be empathetic towards the future me. In 10 years from now, I want to be in a happy, good, structured place where I've put my efforts to a better life for me. Whatever that looks like for you as an individual. And then just work that stuff outward. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be your personal relationships. If you don't like your job or your business structure, Sorry for all the coughing, sneezing, hacking, stuffy nose fever, and I can't sleep type stuff. But you can start slowly restructuring, so you can, you don't have to just walk away and quit your job. You can go talk to the people at your work and say, hey, boss, I got something to say to you. Come here. You can make an arrangement and talk to somebody at work and say, look, I'm not super happy at this job. I'm looking for A, B, and C, and I'm getting X, Y, and Z. Is that anything that can be changed or fixed? If it can, I'd like to stay on and work on it. But if it can't, if you really, really need the job, then maybe you want to start looking for some alternatives before you have this conversation, obviously. But the point of it is, instead of just reacting to your circumstances and stressing that tomorrow's never going to come all the time and living in that abusive mindset, is to take charge and realize that humanity's not going to end within your lifetime, and probably the next lifetime and not, and that we're in charge of it. It's not deterministic. The world just doesn't end because people say it does. People have to make choices. So if we decide that the world's not going to end and it's going to become a better place with happier people and not in abusive relationships that are raising healthy kids in a peaceful parenting situation, then that's what the world's going to be. If we decide that there's not going to be evil people in charge with guns pointed at us, telling us which financial institutes, which farms we can go to, which houses we can live in, and which areas we can go to, and who we can associate, we decide that we're not going to do that anymore, then that's the future we're going to live in. And you don't even have to defer your gratification. You can start doing this today. You can start taking abusive people out of your life today. You can start looking at the positive things that you want to see in your life today. You can start acting on it today. Anarchy and love is all around us. Christians, for example, just think of a Christian, right? Christians aren't like one day when everybody's Christian, we can celebrate being Christian. They're Christian today. So if you want to live in a happy place with happy people, or people that want to work with you voluntarily, that aren't violent, that don't see everything negative for the future, then start talking to those type of people today and ignoring the people that aren't like that. And you can live within an anarchistic society today. I'm constantly trying to support everybody that has similar beliefs to me, and not support and not attack, not break down. Don't put my energy towards getting rid of the bad. Put my energy towards supporting and bringing up the good to the best of my ability. And your life is going to get so much better. And it might be a little bit harder at first if you have to make some difficult decisions. But it's no different than, going to the gym. If you're out of shape and you go to the gym, you have to go through a little bit of pain, and on the other side of the pain, it gets less stressful and less stressful, and then you seem better and better, and then you look up in a couple of years, and it's like, okay, I made it through. It was tough, and now it's easier, and I was a little bit sore, but now I'm not as sore. But the pain was worth the results. And you can do this with your mind, you can do this with your body, you can do this with your essence or soul, whatever you want to call it. And then you can start doing it with your family, your bigger community. And then if we all start doing that, it becomes a regional thing, and then a global thing, and then maybe an intergalactic planetary thing, since the aliens are on the way. But I don't know. Just here in Nebraska, driving back from Vegas. It's October 5th, 2023. It's approximately 3:45 p.m. Nebraska time. Let me know what you think in the comments, please, and I'll talk to you soon.